Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're watching me from. My name is Eugene, QUAIDOO, and I'm the host for today's edition of SEDAT HR Digest, brought to you by SEDAT Consult. SEDAT Consult is an HR firm with over 20 years experience in managing HR for organizations in the areas of talent acquisition, performance management, salary benchmarking, learning and development, and general HR advice services. You can locate SEDAT at Ashama Runabout. It's close to the GCB Bank off the Mission Camp Road. This afternoon, we have a very interesting HR topic at hand, and we are going to discuss workforce planning and management. We have a very wonderful personality in our midst, but before I introduce him, I want to hear from our audience. So kindly go to the comment section, just type your name and where you are watching us from so that we can properly acknowledge your presence because you are part of this program. So I'm waiting to see people commenting and also letting us know where they are watching us from so that we can acknowledge them. So today we have a very important personality in our midst. He's in the person of Mr. Kojo AMISSAH. Mr. Kojo AMISSAH is a very great personality in the HR space in Ghana. He's someone that I personally admire, and I would like to be like him in the future. Yes, he's someone that I've been observing from afar. He's a wonderful personality. Kojo is a competent learner practitioner with a can-do spirit and also an outgoing personality. He trains and prepares people for the SHR certification in Ghana. He holds a BSc in computer science and an MBA in entrepreneurship. Also has the credential in SHRM SCP. And he is also a member of the Society of Human Resource Management, USA. So viewers, let's welcome Mr. Kojo AMISSAH as our guest speaker for today.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. AMISSAH, before we continue, let me use the opportunity to acknowledge some of our viewers. We have Zachary Salamat. She says, good evening. I'm watching you from Kumasi. We have Mr. Jeffrey Boham from Maryland, USA. Welcome, Mr. Jeffrey. Hello. Mr. AMISSAH.
I think I was losing you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, so let me use this opportunity to acknowledge our viewers, then we can continue with the program. So we have Zachary, she is watching us from Kumasi, and we have Mr. Jeffrey Boham from Maryland, USA. Mr. Jeffrey, welcome. And we have Mavis Adams watching us from Tishman, Stephanie from I Am Free, Bridget from Takwa. And Mr. Jeffrey says, Mr. Kojo AMISSAH is my boss. And we have Adriana, who also watching from Takwa. And we have Joanna from Accra. Okay, so Mr. AMISSAH, the topic at hand today is workforce planning and management. So from the start, we would like to know what workforce planning is.
Okay. Thank you for having me. And this is a very interesting topic, and I think one of the biggest one for HR. And I say that because by the time you exhaust workforce planning, you would have touched on all other aspects of HR, including talent management, training and development, and whatever comes with the people that you have to work with. So when we say workforce management, it's a big deal. But I think to begin with, let's set the record straight. sometimes you hear workforce management and sometimes you hear workforce planning. I think the bigger picture is workforce management, and workforce planning is the first step in workforce management. So workforce management is how do you look at the organization plan such that at any point in time you have the right number of people and then with the right competencies at all times. And to be able to do this, you need to be able to do workforce planning. And then you need to be able to apply some of the workforce management techniques. And then you need to also be able to do knowledge management to make sure that the knowledge circulates and stays in the organization.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so Mr. AMISSAH, it's getting interesting. So my next question will be on the role that workforce planning plays in achieving organizational goals.
Yeah. So, like I started off, I didn't want to continue on and on and on. But the first question I ask people when you are talking about workforce planning is, I said, how many people work in your organization? And the person tells me, oh, 200, 300, 100. I said, did you just conjure those numbers from thin air? And most of the times it appears so, because in some organizations, managers at their whims and caprices will just recruit or just order HR to recruit. So you realize that some organizations, they recruit anyhow, and then they are really overstaffed, and others too understaffed. But if you want to do it right, then you have to go through the workforce management process, where the first step is the workforce planning. So you are going to sit down and really determine first and foremost what the organization is about. So you need to, I would say, have a strategic plan. Your strategic plan will lay out your strategic objectives, the things you want to achieve, and so on and so forth. And then the next step you do is, when you look at all the things you have to do as an organization, you say, how do I structure my organization and its people so that work will be regulated, coordinated properly? And by the time you go through that structuring or restructuring, that's when we will have the departments and so on and so forth. Now you come to, I have an accounting department. And then if you look at the objectives, we are going to manage money of this size. We are going to be dealing with investors of that nature. We are going to be doing A, B, C, D. So what skills do we need? So the interesting thing about workforce planning is, for the same organizational size, I can do my plan and I said, we need 10 accountants. Out of the 10 accountants, I need 4 chartered accountants, 3 mid-level, and maybe 3 juniors. Another organization can do the same thing and come up with 8 accountants, where they need 5 chartered accountants and 3 juniors. So which of these is right or wrong? It all depends on what the organization is about. So you look at the job that has to be done and the skills that have to do with it. And when we talk about the skills, then you are talking about not just an accountant, the level of the accountant that can do the job to our satisfaction. Do I need somebody who has ACCA Part 1 or Part 2? Another person say, well, for me, yes, I can use Part 1, Part 2 because I have one chartered overseeing these people. Another one say, I don't even need a chartered. Probably I need a chartered just to sign my financial reports. But I think if I have 6 mid-level accountants, I should be able to do it. So that whole planning is what we call the demand analysis. So demand analysis is where you are looking at organization from scratch and say, who do I need, or how many of them with what qualities, what competencies do I need for them to be able to do this for me? Depending on your approach, we may come up with different number of employees, different set of skills, but it's okay. Because when we are doing this, we're also looking at things like the cost involved in managing those 10 accountants or the 8 accountants and so. So there are so many factors that go into it. But once we finish and we are satisfied, then that is our benchmark, or let's say our clean slate approach. That's the demand. Now, if we are a new company, then it's as simple as how do we make sure that the results of the demand analysis, we can put in steps to get those people. So most of the times it will be recruiting those people. But if we are an existing organization, which I think all of the existing organizations have to do this at least every 2-3 years, maximum 5 years, you have to do the clean slate approach, looking at your organization afresh and say, if we were starting today, based on what we are trying to do, who do we need? But if you're an existing organization, now you've done the demand, you know what is required in the ideal world. Now you are going to look at the supply analysis, which is who do I currently have? And the who do I have, a lot of organizations do that the easiest way by just counting, right? So they do head count and they say we have 400 people, we have 300 people. That is fine. But when you do the head count, the numbers alone is not sufficient. So now the people we have, what are their competency levels? What are they able to do? And then you realize that even though I have 400, maybe another company with 200 can do a lot more because they have highly competent people. So once you have the numbers, you also have to be able to determine the competency levels and see whether the aggregate competencies of all the people, the senior, the junior, and all of that are adequate for you to be able to do what you want to do based on your demand analysis. So then the next stage is gap, because now you've done your demand, you've done your supply, and then you look at gap. Sometimes your demand is looking for 10 people, your supply to you have 10 people, but you may still have a gap because the 10 that the demand is looking for, the competencies and the qualities that it's looking for, your supply analysis, even though it has 10 people, they don't have those competencies. So then your gap will not be number of employees, your gap will be the level of competencies that I have to develop for people to be able to do that. So in your gap analysis, you find out that you have number gaps, meaning either your demand is more than your supply or your supply is more than demand, or you have competency gaps where maybe your demand requires so much competency that your supply doesn't have. And then you come to the last stage, which is your solutions. So your solution will be, I'm overstaffed, so let me move people around or retrench, or I'm understaffed, so let me recruit, or I have the right numbers, but the competencies are not there, so let me put in some intervention to bridge up some competency gaps. So I started off by saying this is one of the huge things that we have to do, because just based on the little thing I'm saying, it tells you that training and development is going to come in. Even your performance management is going to come in, because now the people that you have to be able to manage their performance or use the performance management system to know whether they are capable of doing what you are supposed to do. You may have to go out to recruit, you may have to retrench, and then people are in the organization and they are not happy, and then you can look at the reward system, which will still make these people perform at the levels that you want. So at the end of the day, your workforce management will really look at your employees, whether you have the right numbers and whether they are performing. And then what is not making them perform, sometimes it's as easy as training, but sometimes it goes beyond training to other factors that is not motivating them to perform. And that's where your talent management comes in. So then it puts workforce management as a very big endeavor for HR to embark on a regular basis.
Great. Thank you, Kojo, for this insightful response. And I believe you've cleared a lot of that. Before, as practitioners, we do recruitment. There are a lot that goes on before recruitment even proceed. So Thank you. When you were talking, you made mention of gaps. So that brings to my next question. So in the context of workforce management, how do you address skill gap? Ensure that you have a skilled and adaptable workforce.
Yeah. So the easiest way one may think of is just training, right? Because when it's gap, then first and foremost, probably the easiest way is recruitment. Because let's say we are an accounting, we have an accounting department, we process invoices, and then we also chase payment and all of that. And then we realize that we're able to process invoices, but we are not able to chase payment. So what do we do? So we could, as simple as go out and recruit people who can come in and chase payments for us. But sometimes so we look at the relatedness of the job and then we say, no, the people who process the invoice are the people who are supposed to chase the payment. However, they don't have the competencies required to chase payment. So then we say, okay, these people are able to process invoice, but they don't know how to chase payment. So now let's train them in how to chase payment. And then when we talk about filling the gap, sometimes it's as simple as let's organize a training program in-house or they go to an external provider. But sometimes so we look in-house and we say, no, we are not doing any formal training. There's Kofi within the team who really understands and knows the intricacies of chasing payment. So then we put Kofi on some type of a coaching program with this team for Kofi to work with them hand in hand over a period to transfer the skills of chasing payment and monitoring and then giving them all the tidbits. So if you say closing the gap can be as simple as just go and recruit people. And I think that's what they say buy, right? Or just go and borrow. That's, I think, if you borrow mean you can have some temporary consultants come in and do, or you can say build. Build means you look at the people who are already there and say, how do I upskill them so that they can do? So to fill it, you talk about buy, borrow, build. And then I think that can help fill some of the gaps.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Mr. Mita, my next question will be on the strategic aspect of human resources. You know, now HR contributes to the strategic bit in the business strategy. So my next question will be, how do you align workforce planning with the overall business strategy of an organization?
Yeah, I think indirectly, that was the first question I answered, even though you didn't ask it at the time, which is anytime they say strategic alignment, don't make it look like it's a big deal. It's really not a big deal. Actually, the strategic alignment is the simplest thing we should all be doing. Meaning, I started off by saying the organization will have strategic plan which has objectives that they need to achieve. So if you look at our strategic plan, the objective is to make sure that we invoice people properly, accurately, and collect all our monies within 30 days. That's a strategic objective, quote unquote. So when we say the workforce management has to be strategically aligned, that means we are looking at the strategic plan, which says we are going to invoice people and collect our money within 30 days. So that means that becomes the basis for planning on who we need in the organization. So when we are going to find people, we said, what do we need people to come and do? We need people, not just accountant, but people who processes invoice and people who can chase payment. And where did we get this idea from? We got it from our strategic plan or our strategic objectives. So by just that process, our recruitment is strategically aligned. So technically, everything we do in HR, You just don't get up and do it. You always look at it, say, what does the company wants to do? I'm a mining company. What accountant in a mining company, probably they have to understand cost accounting and all of that, which may be different from accountant from a bank. So then you are asking yourself, what is the operations about? What have we stated? The word is stated in our strategic plan as things that we are going to do. So based on that, if you are always focused on the strategic plan before you take action, that means your actions are strategically aligned. So sometimes people do something and they say, oh, let's seek for alignment. No, the alignment is actually the beginning of the process, because you are looking at what is it that we have stated that we are going to do, and based on that, you plan on what you want to do. So if you always think of it this way, you are almost always strategically aligned.
Great. I think we've learned something new here. In most cases, people get alignment in the middle of the process. So I think it's good that we've cleared our doubts. We should get alignment first before
it has to start from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So let's say I make fun of some of these things, and I tell HR person that you are going to recruit, or even you want to, let's say you want to redesign your compensation system, right? And then I ask you why. You say, oh, my people are complaining, so I want to relook at my salary. I say, no, that is not strategically aligned. That is just firefighting, right? Strategic alignment for changing your compensation is you are looking at your objectives and you are realizing that we are not able to achieve them. And you dig and you realize that because people are not happy with their salaries and all of that, that is why we are not able to push and achieve those objectives. So when you are going to amend your salaries, then the idea is I'm amending my salaries so that people will be motivated so that they can help achieve the objectives. So by so doing, amending the salaries is strategically aligned. So the strategic alignment is key for everything we do. Everything we do, that becomes the basis for action. And so then don't look at it as an isolated activity that we have to do after the fact. It is the basis of what we do.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let's go into diversity and inclusion regards to workforce planning management. So how do you ensure that diversity and inclusion in workforce planning, and why is it essential in organizational success?
Yeah. And again, strategic alignment comes here, right? When we say diversity and inclusion, what are we saying? If we were only men and women, all we are saying is just make sure you have the right skill mix of men and women. If we have different nationalities, we say have the right skills of the different nationalities. If we had the different ethnic groups or different demographics from whatever angle you want to come from, all we are saying. And then I ask you why. Is it necessary? My answer is no, it's not necessary, right? But then why are companies doing that? They are doing that because research has shown that when you have a diverse team, they are more able to come up with innovative and challenging ideas because they challenge themselves, because they are coming from different perspectives, and they are able to come up with things that wows your customers, right? Even in product development, when you have a diverse group, they're able to come up with different perspectives that you may not have thought of. And that helps you design a product that actually attracts the masses, because the product also represents the diversity of thoughts that went into the development process. So you're able to have a higher reach and then higher market penetration and so on and so forth. So when you look at it, the diversity is not just the nice thing to do. HR should not be doing any nice things. Okay, you have to be doing things that are strategically aligned. So now I'm there and I'm looking at yourself for this product. If I put the diverse team together, we are going to come up with different views of the product and have a product which will in effect reach a diverse market, so that they will even buy more of my product. So I'm going to even make more money as an organization. So ensuring diversity becomes a strategic imperative. It's not a nice thing to do. It is what we have to do to actually excel as an organization. So when you take it from that point of view, then you practicalize it. Practicalizing means is you look at your area you want to serve, and the rule of thumb is let your organization mimic the demographic that you play in. So let's say if we're in Ghana and we say, let's just focus on men and women. We have women 50 something percent and men 40 something percent. Let's say women 60%, men 40%. Then the real situation is my organization representing women 60% and men 40%. And then we say, okay, traditionally, we haven't been like that. What is our numbers today? Our numbers are maybe even men are 70%. So then we say, okay, we cannot change that situation right now. Let's set a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year target where we can now begin to increase the number of women over a period so that it represents the society. And by so doing, one of the other mistakes people do is, let's say women are underrepresented, and we say, let's make sure it reflects the general environment in which we operate. So then arbitrarily, you just go and take any woman that is looking for a job, and that also is not strategically aligned. So then the strategic alignment in even filling the position with the women, it says you set the minimum standards required to do the job the right way. Then when the woman meets that minimum standards, then the woman will be given the opportunity, even though a man could have surpassed that standard. But where a woman doesn't meet that standard, you don't have to lower the standards because of diversity, because the person who doesn't meet the minimum standards probably will come into the organization and draw the organization down. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, I personally don't think it's a nice thing to do. I think it's a strategic thing to do because it brings diversity of ideas, diversity of thoughts, and it shows in the type of products you develop, and it shows in how you even reach your market, and it actually helps the organization to grow bigger.
So to my HR practitioners, diversity and inclusion, it's not a nice thing to do, but it's a strategic thing to do, and it should reflect in your organization's success. Okay, thanks so much, Mr. AMISSAH. So my next question will be on technology. Let's say we're in a technological world, so everything boils down to technology. So what role does technology play in modern workforce planning, and how can organizations leverage it effectively?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, if you had an Excel sheet and you entered all the people in your organization and their sex, date of birth, and all of that, and then I ask you, how many women do we have here? Probably you do some sorting in Excel and you'll be able to tell me. I said, how many women here have a project management qualification? I'm sure you can do some sorting in Excel and you can tell me, and so on and so forth, or even manually on paper. So what that means is, if we were 20 people, I think it's okay. I can just do it quickly and tell you, give you the numbers. How many people needs to be trained so that we get to this level? I can look at my handwritten notes or something and tell you. But take an organization that is 400, 500, 2,000 and all of that. Can we do it manually? Of course we can. What does that mean? That means probably there's going to be a lot of manual errors. Okay. And maybe it's going to take so much time to do 400, 4,000. Some organizations are 20,000 people. So how many people are we going to employ just to understand a category of people who have these qualifications or who are competent in these areas and so on and so forth. So when you look, the more you look at the volumes, the more it tells you that you need help. And the help is nothing more than technology, because technology, just flip of a finger. You just, if things have been set up properly, you put in the right information, you just click on a button, all these things will be given to you. And I think it helps with quick redeployment of staff, decision making, and at times a project comes up. Okay, do you have to go and hire somebody? You can just go into your system and you say, these are the projects that are coming up, these are the skills requirements. How do we get the people? Your system can spill out the people within a second or a minute. Your system can spill out the people with those requisite competencies. And then what are the people doing? What projects are they working on? It can tell you right now. At what level are they in their proficiency levels with the competencies that are required? It can show you that out of the 200 people, 40% are level 5 proficiency level, 30% and so on and so forth. So with the use of technology, understanding your workforce demands and what you actually have, and doing some redeployment or arrangement is just a matter of, if not minutes, hours. Whereas if you were to do it manually for a labor force of, let's say, 20,000, you are talking about 2 years. By the time you finish manual process in 2 years, we've moved on to another project. So for me, and again, this goes to all angles of the work that we do today, especially with the whole advent of robotics and AI taking over the workplace. It tells you that we just need to do things efficiently. Even though some of us, we are so smart that we think using technology means you are not good enough. But no, it's just a complementary tool which reduces the amount of time you would use to do it yourself if you are the smartest guy in the room, so that you have extra time to think strategically to know where the organization goes. So for me, workforce management is big. If you are like 20-man company, maybe you say you don't need it. But if you are 100, probably you do. If you are 200, you do. If you are 1,000, you definitely do need some technology to help you sift through these things smoothly.
Okay, great. Mr. AMISSAH, so we'll take a quick break. But before we go on break, let me also use the opportunity to welcome some people in our comment section. So we have Bernadette also watching us. We have Portia watching us from Thermal Community 25. Straight from Takoradi. We have Christiana also watching us. And we have Augustine from Accra. And also we have Michael Kissi. Yeah, welcome, Mr. Kissi. And we have Dan also watching us from one. Philip watching us from Iraq. We have Ifa from Kumasi. And also Matilda watching us from Akusum. Team, So welcome back. So I will encourage our viewers to go to the comment section and type their questions, and I will read it out for Mr. AMISSAH to answer them. Before we proceed, I'd like to let everyone know that SEDAT Consult is organizing performance management training on the 28th and 29th. So interested people should, I think there's a link in the comment section. Just click on this and register to be part of this training. So viewers will be waiting for your question. So Mr. I have one more question. So my question would be more like a practical one. So in your own experience, what you've seen since you started your career, what are the key challenges that organizations face in workforce planning? And also, how can they solve them? Or maybe how they would solve them in the past?
Yeah. I think the challenge that we have is the leadership of the organization and their understanding of what HR should be doing. And also for HR to build its own capacity to really understand what they are supposed to do. And when you look at HR, sometimes we know what we are supposed to do, but the how, when I talk about the how, which is the behaviors that are associated with it, how do you convince management? How do you make a business case? And all of that, at times we have found wanting. So HR is sitting there, and the managers, the MDs, the CEOs, they are just calling HR, hey, recruit 5 people for this department. Let's do this. You are there, and the manager comes, hey, I need 10 people by next month. And then they are giving HR instructions, and HR is just following through. And then HR recruits these people, say, oh, our HR is very efficient. Every time we want people, they're able to get it. It's all wrong, seriously. Meaning HR should be able to make a business case to management that we cannot be doing this haphazard and ad hoc recruitment year in and year out. So anytime we finish our strategic plan, we need to sit down as a team with HR being the project manager to now assess the people that we have. And that's where you do the workforce planning. I say, based on the strategic plan that we have, most organizations will do 4-year, 5-year strategic plan. So he said, based on this 5-year strategic plan, who do we really need to be able to execute this? And then you go through this, and there are processes to go through, there are templates, their opinions that you can get from line managers and all of that to be able to determine the ideal situation and be able to now come up and say, what do we have? And then you do your supply analysis, and then you come up with a staffing plan. So then the staffing plan is supposed to address your needs today and your needs tomorrow based on your strategic plan. So when you do that, this whole ad hoc recruitment would be, the ideal situation is to have 0. But of course, in the realistic world, it doesn't happen. But at least it will reduce the ad hoc recruitment to the barest minimum. So every time we are just there and managers, CEOs, and board members, and everybody are throwing CVs at HR to recruit them, that means the management and the HR and everybody is completely lost. So I think HR needs to build competency in workforce management, and then in also how to navigate through the leadership of the organization to get them to embrace that we just don't recruit. We recruit based on our strategic plan, and we plan it ahead. And then we have a staffing plan that we follow. Once in a while, something may crop up and there may be the need for the ad hoc recruitment. But seriously, the ideal situation is 0. So how close can you get to 0 becomes the effectiveness of HR. I hope that makes sense.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. My last Yes. It makes sense. And this is people and who.
Oh, I think I'm losing you. I didn't
Yes,
hear what
sorry.
you.
I think I was having some network. Hello, Mr. Bisa.
Yes, sir.
Yes, is it better now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so it's been a wonderful session, and if you can see the comment section, a lot of people are enjoying. We have some questions also in the comment section. I'll read it out so that you can answer them for us. So, Monsieur Suleiman, who is on the call from Mali, thanks for joining. So this question is from Mr. Jeffrey Boha. So this question is, who will be the key stakeholders in planning the entire workforce ecosystem, sorry, in addition to business executives and HR?
Hey, Jeff. Jeff is supposed to have called me, and he hasn't called me. Now I've caught him right here. But I think it's good. It's good to be with you, Jeff. And when you talk about the stakeholders in the ecosystem, just think about what is the ecosystem, right? Earlier on, you talk about involvement with software and so on and so forth. But the key thing is, of course, the HR and HR leadership is key. The organizational leadership, as he's saying, is key. And some of these things I say for, especially if you live in Ghana, and then the board of directors are key because the workforce planning actually throws out the numbers that we need, and the numbers comes with a budget which normally is approved by the board level. But then the bigger ecosystem would be your service providers who are going to help you with all the interventions that you can use to actually address any gaps that you may need. So the outsourcing firm, the recruitment firms, the technical support providers, and all of that will be part of the ecosystem. Because ask yourself, why are companies using outsourced staff? Okay, it's the same concept. It's part of the workforce planning. By using the outsourced staff, it's part of the workforce management strategies. So when you decide that I need 400 people, then you ask yourself, do the 400 people, do I have to recruit them and manage them on my payroll, or do I need them at all times, or I can use a third party so that I don't need the 400 at all times every day, but I need them every so often. So I work with a third party to make sure that anytime I need 400, they can give it to me, or when I need 300 and so on. So when you look at your third party service providers who are going to make sure that you can meet your workforce need, they are actually a key part. When you look at some of the mining companies, some of the manufacturing companies, I'm sure one morning, if an outsourced partner just pulls the plug and say, we are not bringing our people to the mines anymore, the mines will collapse at least temporarily or for some time to go. So beyond the leadership of the organization, I will include the board, and then I will include third-party providers. But even the employees, sometimes it's not just the leadership. People performing key roles within key units, because they can also advise as to the type of skills that are really, really needed, the current people, what's the workload situation, and so on. But I think third parties are a key component that I'll add to this.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for the answer. Also, let me acknowledge the presence of Tamaklu and also Christiana S. Jeshi Awoku. They are great personality also watching this program. Good evening. Okay, and also there's one comment from Atukwamina AMISSAH. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Ibisa, for the insightful and informative webinar on workforce planning. Workforce planning can be a strategic tool to ensure that the organization improves its process and procedures. It also ensures demand meets supply when it comes to recruitment, where the competencies and skills of employees are reskilled or upskilled. Thank you, Atukwamina, for this. And also, Jeffrey has responded that the response that you gave is very detailed, and he appreciates it very much. So, yeah, viewers, keep your questions coming. Mr. AMISSAH is here to answer all your questions. If you have doubts that you need to clear, I think you are in the right place. Ask, and you get answers to them.
Okay, and then when you look at workforce planning, right, I think one of the key things people should be able to take away is the workforce planning itself will be demand analysis, supply analysis, gap analysis, and then solutions analysis. So take these 4 things as a takeaway, right, for workforce planning. You always have to, so demand is who do we need, supply is who do we have, gap is what's the difference between who we need and who we have, and then the solution is how do we address the gap, right?
Yeah. Yes. Thanks so much, Mr. AMISSAH. So I think there's one question from Stephanie. She says, Mr. AMISSAH, what opportunities exist for employees, employee development and career advancement within the organization?
Yeah. So when we do the workforce planning, it actually opens up gaps in the organization. Where gaps means it comes up with areas where we are understaffed or areas where we are overstaffed. And when I say understaffed or overstaffed, it's not so much of the numbers alone. It's both the numbers and the qualities that we have. So in an area where we understaffed, it could be that we have the right numbers, we don't have the right competencies. But sometimes we can show an area where it's understaffed with the numbers. And then it can show an area where we are overstaffed with the numbers. And if the organization is open for job rotation, then it says, look, our IT department really needs 10 and we have 7. Whereas our, let's say, marketing department has excess of 20. So we are looking for people who have been dreaming about other career options. And then organizations through job rotation can say, look, these are the opportunities, because we don't want to go and recruit more people into the organization, but then we already have people in the organization, and these are the opportunities to move people around. So through job rotation, job enrichment, and other strategies, people are actually able to move from one area to the other. And in some cases too, now you understand your skills gap, then you can also develop yourself for wider or broader engagement within the organization. So workforce planning opens up the gaps, but then you have to have all of these programs in place. I think I like job rotation as one of the strategies, because sometimes somebody loves the organization, but they are a bit burnt out from the particular functional area that they find themselves. And they wish, if you go to a lot of organizations, right, somebody is in sales, and the person is doing MBA in finance. Ask yourself why. They think their future is in finance, and they love these organizations. But because we don't provide the avenue for them to remain here and work in finance, by the time you realize that person has found a job in another company as a finance person. So when you do your workforce analysis and you come up with the gaps, in addressing the gap, you also have to look at what do your people want, right? Who is entertaining some idea of new set of skills or new areas to move in. And then if you have programs in place for your organization, you can fulfill the organizational needs and then the employee needs, and then people will be happy and we're all moving. Be happy within the organization. Yes. And Stephanie, hi. Stephanie is one of my bosses.
Oh, okay. Great. And Mr. Amis, I think you just put yourself a virtual mentee. Portia says, wow, how can we reach Mr. Amis? It's very deep, and I need him as a coach or mentor.
I mean, my number is very public, everybody. So you guys can share my number with the audience, and I don't really mind. I mean, my number is public, so anybody can reach me. Yeah. And then I see
Okay.
Cletus. I see Cletus. Cletus too is one of my bosses here.
Okay. Yes. Great. I think Cletus is enjoying the whole session.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so before we continue, I think let me use the opportunity to also talk about the upcoming training, the effective performance management training that is taking place from 28th to 29th February. The focus is on the balance scorecard, the 360-degree feedback. This workshop is designed to equip you with knowledge and skills needed to create a high-performance culture within your organization. So I encourage all HR professionals to take advantage of this. I believe by the time you finish this training and you go back to your various organization, you implement great performance management system, ensure that you have high performance culture in your organization. Okay. So there is one question from Bernadette. So she wants to know, where does succession planning comes in?
Yeah. So, when I try to differentiate between workforce management and workforce planning, I said that workforce management is the bigger picture of how we make sure that the organization has the requisite people and the competencies at all times. And then the first step is the workforce planning. And then the next step is the workforce management strategies. And one of the strategies is succession planning, right? One of the strategies is succession planning, because you did your workforce planning based on your 5-year strategic plan. And within that 5 years, sometimes even the skills that you come up with, you don't need some of them like today. You need some skills maybe from next year or year 2. And also the Stephanie's question about the gaps and all of that, it tells you where we have gaps and then where we have overfills. And then in the workforce planning, you do demographic analysis too. So that also tells you people who will be exiting the organization and so on and so forth. Workforce planning, you also look at your turnover. Your turnover also gives you an idea of how often do people leave your organization and all of this. And then it also helps you to identify skills that are really in high demand or is difficult to fill. So succession planning becomes part of the workforce management strategies, which helps you to address potential gaps in the future. So when you look at succession planning, it's not like somebody is going to go on retirement next year. So let's get Eugene to be ready. That's not succession planning. That you can call it replacement planning. Succession planning is where you look at your organization and you look at critical roles, right? Most of the times we use the managerial, the directorship as the critical roles, but it's not always the case. There are some specific roles. I know when you go to some of the engineering firm, like you have instrumentation engineer, maintenance engineer, or some key roles that when that person or there are two people on the shift, when they quit, the machine stops running. So that becomes a critical role. So you look at all these critical roles in the organization, not necessarily managerial role or somebody who is going to leave. You look at a critical role and you say, just in case today Eugene wins the lotto and wins $10 million and is quitting today, can we get somebody to do what Eugene is doing? And somebody say, no, we won't find anybody, but it's okay. There are so many people on the market. Oh, that as for that skills is common. Then it's okay. Eugene is not a critical role. But somebody say, wow, if Eugene should leave today, we are dead. That means it's a critical role. Eugene might not be a director. But if everybody say, if Eugene leaves today, we are dead, then it's a critical role. Then we have to take steps in making sure that just in case he leaves, there are a pool of candidates. So succession planning doesn't come up with when Eugene leaves, Kojo is coming in. No. When Eugene leaves, we know the pool of candidates that we can screen and pick from. So succession planning is like part of the workforce management strategies, making sure we understand the criticality of roles in the organization and making a pool of candidates ready just in case it becomes available. But most of the times we look at it from retirement. So like when you go to an organization with older workers, then people say, oh, we don't have succession planning. There are a lot of old people. What if they leave? That is replacement planning. Succession planning has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with anything, has all to do with critical roles that we cannot afford to leave vacant. Critical roles that we cannot afford to leave vacant. So sometimes your succession planning has nothing to do with somebody in the organization. You say, when Eugene leaves, we are going to SEDAT because SEDAT can supply us with some consultant to fill in the gap. So that is part of your succession plan. So succession plan is not like you always have somebody waiting. He said you have a way of filling the gap either temporarily or permanently so that there's no disruption in business.
That's great. I think in most cases we often think succession planning is just for managerial roles, but it's for critical roles, not necessarily just managerial roles. Thank you, Mr. AMISSAH. I think we have another question from Tukwamina Isata. Tukwamina is very active on SEDAT HR Digest on every Sundays. So he says, how does workforce planning help in putting in place effective succession planning and career development? I'm sure you may have touched a little bit on it. I don't know if you have something to add up.
Well, the only thing I can add is situate it properly. So, workforce management, okay, consists of three things, which is workforce planning, workforce management strategies, and then knowledge management. Okay, so succession planning is just a workforce management strategy, meaning if you forecast what you need over the next 5 years, all we are saying is have a plan that says we cannot afford to have a critical role vacant, and that is succession planning. So whatever it means, of course, we all know that our leadership are critical roles, so we think of them most of the times. But think of any other role that is difficult to fill, that is really important, and then say we have you may be surprised that you can take some organization and succession planning, the front desk office is part of succession planning because it's so critical the way we meet customers, the way we greet them, the way we direct them, we think it can dent our image. So if our front desk is not there, we cannot just put any other person there. It has to be something of some caliber, somebody of some caliber who can handle our guests the way we want. Okay, I'm stretching it.
Okay.
I just want you to get the import of succession planning, that it's not always about the big guys, it's about roles that we consider very critical. And I think once I mention this, then I have to touch on knowledge management, because you cannot talk about workforce management without talking about knowledge management. And knowledge management technically is that you have to have some technology in place that will kind of mimic what everybody does, get like almost a mirror copy of our brains within the organization, so that when we quit, what we used to do for the organization will still be in the organization by querying the system. What I'm saying, the system, a database. So everything Kojo does is well documented, policies, SOPs, strategies, and all of that. So when Kojo is not there, you don't have to call Kojo. You just go to the system, say, how do we do this thing? Then you see that Kojo has documented all his steps, and then you can do it almost the way Kojo does it.
Well, that's very great. And we have a lot of people enjoying the session. If we still continue, I think we will spend the whole day here, because we can get a lot of comments coming in, questions. So I believe Bernadette and Atokwa and AMISSAH are clear on their questions. My author to say is great insight from Kojo. Keep it up, sir. We also have Cletus, so watching us from Asimbreku, and Michael Kissi. Great and insightful resource person. We'll be glad to have you more often. So, Mr. AMISSAH, prepare. We call you to talk to us on other HR topics. I think I'll take this last question from Charles Loco, and I think end this whole session. So how would an HR workforce management planning in a company that is going through a business recession and cannot afford to do frequent replacements, etc.? Let me take the question again. How would an HR workforce management planning in a company that is going through a business recession and cannot afford to do frequent replacement, etc.?
Yeah. So my simplest answer to Charles, hello Charles, how are you? Is that is the time you actually need workforce planning. Okay, you need workforce planning in critical times, because in critical times when the company is not doing well, it calls for re-strategizing, meaning come up with some type of a transformation plan from struggling to success. You have to come up with that strategic plan. And when you come with struggling to success and you don't do workforce planning, probably you are struggling because you are using the wrong skills of the yesterday to do your tomorrow's work. So workforce planning is what you really need, a struggling company need, so that you know that going into the future from struggling to success, these are the new set of skills that I need. These are the new attributes, and these are the numbers I need. So for me, when you are going through a transformation, you definitely need workforce planning, because workforce planning, I think the question says you don't need a lot of turnover. But workforce planning can say, look, the skills that I'm using is the problem why I'm not succeeding. So I need to get rid of all of them and get a new set of skills. Or I need to upskill my people, retool them in different areas for us to be able to become successful. So you actually need it when you are struggling.
Oh, that's great. Stephanie says, I kindly recommend for Kojo to come back on the show for a part 2 session where he can enlighten us on HR strategy. As I said earlier, Mr. AMISSAH, you should prepare for more. And also, I now understand why front desk officers is a critical role now. Mr. Jeffrey Brown says, now they are renaming them to and now the director of first impressions. So that's the new title for front desk officer. Mr. Visa, I think we will end our session here. I'd like to use the opportunity to thank you for joining us today. I think each and everyone has been blessed with your knowledge and wisdom you have in the HR profession. So we'd like to take the final words, and we can bring this show to an end.
Yeah, I think I also want to thank the audience. I know some of them, Jeff, Stephanie, Cletus, and the rest of them, and I think they are all respectable HR people in the space. But I'll end by saying, when somebody asks you how many people are working in your organization, and you can open your mouth and say 200, you really have to be able to prove why 200. Okay, if you're able to do that, that means your workforce management strategy is spot on. So you ask HR, how many people do you have? He said, how did you come up with 200? You know, the line managers do requests every so often, and that's how we got there. That's not the answer we want. How many people work there? 200. How did you come with 200? Oh, we look at our strategic plan and we went through a laborious process to do workload analysis, do this, do that, and came up with the 200. So that's the answer I would like most of our HR to give when they are asked to defend how many people work with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ebisa. And our viewers, we are grateful. I think you made this session a wonderful one every Sunday. So we are live every Sunday at 4 p.m. So hopefully next week, Sunday, we'll meet on this same platform to discuss different HR. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like and share. SEDAT HR Digest is proudly brought to you by SEDAT HR Consults. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.